Welcome to Let's Talk Thyroid, where we explore different aspects of living a healthy thyroid lifestyle, positively and practically, to help you thrive and not just survive. Join me, Annabel Bateman, your host, and let's talk thyroid. Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of Let's Talk Thyroid. I'm Annabel Bateman, and in this episode, I'm going to run you through my thyroid story, a bit of background about your host of the podcast, and then I'm going to share with you 3 things that you might find helpful in your thyroid journey, because they're things that I wish I had have known a little bit earlier on in mine. So let's dive in. I am one of 3 children in the family that I grew up in. I have a younger sister and a younger brother and 2 amazing parents. So I had a very, very happy childhood, lived on a farm in Marulan, which is near Goulburn in New South Wales, until I was 8. And then my parents bought a news agency in Sydney and we moved to Sydney. So then I grew up in Sydney until I moved to Brisbane in 2001. So my childhood, as I said, very happy childhood. From a health point of view, I did have lots of tonsillitis as a little person and lots of antibiotics to treat that. And when I was about 4 or 5, I had my tonsils and adenoids out. Otherwise, as far as I remember, I was always a pretty healthy child. As I said before, when I was 8, we moved to Sydney. And for me, that was a pretty stressful move. I moved from a very small school, like a school of about 70, to a massive school in Sydney of about 11 or 1200. And I think, I really felt a bit lost. It was a big move. I made a fabulous friend, and then she moved overseas at the end of the year that we moved. And so those last couple of years of primary school I found quite tough. But I would go over to the shop, the news agency, after school and eat chocolate that I took from underneath the counter of the news agency. It's all right, I have confessed this to mum and dad, and ate a lot of cinnamon donuts. So I'm not quite sure. I think then a physical and emotional addiction to sugar started. And look, who knows where all that fits into the story. I think it's all, all our food and gut health is intricately linked, and it's hard to know. And when we look back, it's, we'll never really know how everything really fits together. But as a teenager, I had a fabulous time at high school. I had lots of lovely friends. I was a good student academically. I don't really know how I felt as a teenager. I know I felt a bit a bit dorky. I was a bit overweight. I didn't feel very attractive. I know I didn't have a lot of energy, but I worked pretty hard. Like I said, I was a pretty diligent student. And, it's only when I look back, I think it's probably around that age, 12 or 13, that it's my best guess as to when my thyroid issues really started or really kicked in. And often those changes in female hormonal shifts like puberty, pregnancy and menopause are often triggers to Hashimoto's. So as I said, I guess we'll never really know, but I look back in photos and I've tried to piece it together, and I think that's probably when things kicked off. So I don't have a whole lot of comparison to how I used to feel and then felt bad, because for me, I think I've just always grew up with gradually declining thyroid health, and so don't really have a comparison. But, left school, went to uni, studied an arts law degree, and it was at the end of my law degree that things started to unravel in my health. And, I was tired, I was stressed, I was emotional, my hair was thinning and frizzy. My nails were brittle, and I had extreme muscle weakness, which in the end was probably the clinching symptom to really get things investigated. So, the part of the trouble with thyroid conditions is that the symptoms are so easily explained by other things. I was tired and stressed because I was in my last year of my law degree, and I was working a couple of jobs, and I was involved in the youth group in my church. I was busy, and it's stressful. That sort of, study is stressful. So it's hard, often those core symptoms of having an underactive thyroid are really easily explained by other things. And that's part of what makes diagnosis tricky. And often it takes a long time to get to the point where you realize that these things are not normal. But for me, the clincher was the extreme muscle fatigue. And I remember not being able to hold my arms up to wash my hair and dry my hair. And so I think that was a sign both to me and Mum that things weren't right. Went to the doctor, got tested, and my TSH, which was my thyroid stimulating hormone, which is meant to be under 4, was 185. So I remember at the time the GP, who was a fabulous GP, saying, right, you're in to see the endocrinologist. Within a couple of days anyway, I don't remember exactly, but they were pretty amazed that I was functioning at all. So I went to see the endocrinologist, who confirmed that I had an underactive thyroid. I don't remember at that point being diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I don't know that they tested thyroid antibodies. We're talking about 23 or 4 years ago, so I'm not too sure. But what I do remember was crying after seeing the endocrinologist, who pretty much said to me along the lines of, don't worry, you'll be okay. All you've got to do is take this pill for the rest of your life and you'll be fine. That's my memory of the advice that I was given at that time. And I remember being really upset about that, being told at 22 that I had a lifelong illness that required lifelong medication. That really upset me, and kind of being told, well, that's what you do. That's just the way you treat this, is you just take a pill. And so I think I've come to realize over many years that that's not the case, that it's not simply a matter of just take a pill and you'll be fine, because for most people that just doesn't hold up. And it certainly didn't hold up for me. Absolutely, I'm in fact, we have to be medicated if that's the advice, and that our thyroid has been destroyed to the point where we need medication. So I've always taken thyroid medication and will continue to do so. But I am very passionate that that's not the only thing that we can do. So I guess in terms of then my ongoing journey, I suppose like a lot of people with Hashimoto's, being overweight and having, that sort of constantly trying to lose weight, and that being very frustrating, was certainly a very core part of my health story, or from being a teenager in my 20s and well into my 30s. So I feel like I've spent the better part of my life on a diet. I think I've tried everything from Weight Watchers multiple times to the Israeli army diet to counting calories and points and all sorts of things. So I understand the weight battle. And, quite early on, probably within a couple of years of being diagnosed, I saw a funny old naturopath in a health food shop close by to where I was working. And he was the very first person that told me that I needed to quit sugar and dairy and coffee. And I did actually for a short period of time. But to be honest, I didn't really want to believe him. It seemed a bit weird to me, seemed a bit crazy, seemed very hard. And so, somehow it seemed easier for me to get up at 4:30 in the morning, go slog myself out at the gym, walk past the coffee shop and have a coffee, a piece of Turkish bread, toast and jam on my way to work, which was, I look back now and I think, gosh, I did a lot of damage to myself. Slogging my guts out, probably burning through my adrenals, eating sugar and gluten, dairy, all these things that I know now. I know better now, but at the time I just didn't want to hear it. It was a bit more unusual back then in the late 90s to be on a restricted diet, certainly for thyroid conditions, but even generally. So I guess I just went on my merry way, kept taking my thyroid pills and just kept going. So I moved forward a few years and I'd moved to Brisbane, got married, had a baby. And then when I was pregnant with Ben, who's my second one, I started seeing my doctor, who I still see now, Dr. Ellen Thomas. And she was the next person to tell me that diet could really make a difference to my thyroid health and to how I was feeling. And so I remember her telling me to cut gluten and dairy. And so I would do it for a while and then it would creep back in. I wouldn't feel that bad. So it became this bit of a yo-yo-y sort of thing. And then I saw Sharon Wilford, my naturopath, and she told me the same thing. And I look back and I think I must be really an excruciating client to treat, really painful person who doesn't actually listen to the advice or takes a very, very long time to come around to it. But over time, I guess I did more and more reading about Hashimoto's. I came to understand that it was an autoimmune disease, and so I dug into what autoimmunity meant. I guess I did more and more reading and research, and often the more you're exposed to an idea, the more acceptable it becomes, I suppose. And so I came to understand the connection between my gut health and my autoimmune condition. And the importance of at least, at the bare minimum, removing gluten to help support leaky gut and my gut health. And so this diet part of my journey has become a very key part, but it also took me many years to get to the point where I was prepared to change my diet. And, so I think I got to the point where I was probably about 80-ish% gluten-free. And I remember sitting with Dr. Thomas and saying to her, can you just remind me why it's so important to be gluten-free? Because I don't really feel that bad when I have it and I never get sick and I don't really understand. It's hard. So just remind me why I need to be doing it. And I remember really clearly her saying to me that with autoimmune disease, my body is so revved up dealing with my thyroid issues that it fights off all the little things like coughs, colds, those sorts of things. I would very rarely get them. But what I need to do is make sure that my whole body system, and the gut is so deeply connected to our immune system and our gut health, and increasingly I'm aware of my thyroid health as well, that I need to have my gut health in as good a condition as I can, and my overall health, so that if something kind of big comes along, that my body has the reserves to defend itself, to protect itself, and not get something else. Because if you know anything about autoimmune diseases, they like company, they like to hang out with each other. And so having one autoimmune disease does make you more susceptible to acquiring others. And so I remember her saying to me, you don't want to get lupus or MS or rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's disease or, diabetes, all these other autoimmune diseases. And so that conversation really helped me to break up with gluten permanently. I think I needed that reminder. I needed to really get my head around the fact that it needed to be preventative. And so really after that, I haven't deliberately eaten gluten, very, very rarely. In terms of other, dietary changes, I suppose, back in September 2012, Lee and I did a whole 30-day paleo challenge, which really cuts out not only gluten, but grains, dairy, sugar, legumes, alcohol. And we actually found it much more enjoyable than we thought we would, and actually much easier than we thought we would. And so I think really since then, that's made me realize what a big impact grains have on my body in a general sense. And also, so I think I would say that I have a paleo-ish diet. And certainly that's made a big difference to my gut health and how I feel, and my, I think generally improving my thyroid health as well. About 6 years ago, in 2014, I started getting some weakness down my right leg and right arm, which led me to have an MRI, and it was discovered that I had a lesion, quite a large lesion on the left-hand side of my brain, which, after further investigation, I was diagnosed as having a single episode of demyelination. Now, demyelination is when the myelin sheath that protects the nerves, your nerves starts to, your body attacks it and it wears away, and so you lose some neurological function. And so, MS, multiple sclerosis, is when you have multiple of these demyelination lesions. And so that really threw me, because, here I am trying to work really hard to prevent other autoimmune diseases, and here I am, I've acquired another one. And so that really, really helped me to get a grip on my health. The way I manage my health has to be about wellness. It has to be about a lifestyle that I can maintain for life. It has to be about feeling good and healthy and well, and prevention, really. So that was the final nail in any dieting coffin I had. It certainly made me just think, look, you know what? It actually doesn't matter if I'm never super skinny. Probably doesn't matter if I ever wear a size 10 pair of jeans or a bikini. I just need to be healthy. And so that was a really big wake-up call. And it's interesting because only just in the last week or two, I've started to really understand the connection between Hashimoto's and brain inflammation, and really whether or not this demyelination is just an extension of, or part of, brain inflammation connected to Hashimoto's. So I do a lot around supporting that brain inflammation, brain health. And over the last 6 years since that, I'm so pleased that I haven't had any other lesions. I do have an annual MRI and visit to the neurologist. And so far he just says, keep doing what you're doing. I don't really understand, but just keep doing what you're doing. So I do. I say, you've got to understand that I'm not sitting around waiting for another lesion. I'm doing a lot of things proactively to manage my health. So really probably in the last few years, it's become more and more apparent to me, like I said before, that managing my health I have to take a lifestyle approach to it. And that it's adaptable and changeable and depends on what's going on as to how strictly I may be following that paleo style diet. I'm a very big advocate for having a team of health professionals. So that's definitely important. I see my doctor about every 3 months. If things are going haywire, it's a bit more frequent than that. When things are stable, it's a little less frequent, but about every 3 or 4 months. And I get my bloods tested. If I feel like things are going out of whack in between time, I'll book an appointment to see my naturopath. I do a lot of things just to proactively manage that health. But one of the keys that I've come to accept in the last few years is the need to take stress management much, much, much more seriously. So about 5 years ago, Ellen did prescribe me a trip to a health retreat because she said you have to get your stress levels down. Just that day-to-day stress, that pressure that you put on yourself to be everything to everyone and manage a busy household. She said you really have to do that. And I said, well, are you going to write that down? Are you going to actually prescribe that? And she did. I took it home to Lee and I said, I've just been prescribed a trip to a health retreat. he said, well, off you go then. And so, I did some research and digging, and I found this amazing place that I wanted to go to in Thailand for a week. And but in the end, I thought, I actually have to get better at dealing with stress on a day-to-day level, because it's all very well to go off to this amazing place and be chilled out for a week, but I'm going to come back to my normal life, and if I haven't worked out how to actually deal with those day-to-day stresses, then it's all been a big waste of time and money. So I didn't go, which was a mistake, actually. I should have done both. What I should have done was gone on the health retreat, pondered how I could change my day-to-day life, come back and made some significant changes. But I didn't go on that health retreat, but I have been working out over time how to manage those day-to-day stress levels better. And a very key part of that for me has been the introduction of essential oils into my daily routine. And it's not the only thing that I do that helps manages my stress, but I think it really is key. And it just gives me a really simple tool that if I'm feeling irritable or frustrated or stressed or worked up, then I can pull out an essential oil, add a couple of drops into a diffuser, or roll some onto my wrist and take in some deep breaths, and it just calms me. It just gives me that shift. And so, yes, stress management has certainly been a very key feature in the last few years. So, look, in the end, my journey, my thyroid story, there might be elements of it that you can relate to, but it's my story, and what's worked for me is going to be different to what works for you. We all need to take that individual responsibility to be responsible and proactively manage our health, that we need to go get the tests that we need to get tested. We need to do our own reading and research and trial and error of things that are going to work or may not work, for each of us individually. But when we have a thyroid condition like Hashimoto's, it is lifelong. So we've got plenty of time to figure this out. We don't have to do everything all at once, but we do have to take some action if we want to really feel good. And so I guess when I look back, my top 3 tips that if I could give you now, that if I wish I had have done differently or a little bit earlier, would be number 1, it's not just about taking medication. Now, it is about taking medication if we need to do that to bring our thyroid back into normal reference ranges. But it's not just about that. Having a thyroid condition is really like having a whole body condition. It impacts on, our gut, our brain, our joints, our liver, our skin, our immune system. It's very, very complex. And so we have to take an integrated, holistic approach to managing our health. So if I had have grasped that at the beginning, who knows what difference that would have made. But I do think that's really important to get your head around that. The number 2 is that stress matters far more than you realise. So it's really critical that you learn to manage stress well, whatever that looks like for you. So stress, look, we'll go into stress in a whole lot more detail in other episodes, but we all need to work out some simple strategies that are going to help us manage stress on the day-to-day levels well, so that we can reduce inflammation, that we can stay calm, that we can improve our thyroid health. Stress really does matter. And the third is that changing my diet was critical. And I've done a lot of work on that over the years, but I had to be ready. Like you heard me say, I first heard about changing my diet probably in the late 90s, but it wouldn't have been until, certainly 2010, 11, 12, around there, that I really started taking it differently. That's 10, 11, 12 years worth. So I had to be ready. So you do have to be ready, and you do have to know why that you're making a change to your diet. But I really encourage you, if you haven't made any dietary changes, that you dig into that. Do some Googling, do some reading, and get your head around it, and be prepared to give it a try for a good couple of months and just to see how you feel. So they're my top 3 tips. It takes a holistic approach. Stress really matters, and so does diet. Diet is critical. In the next episode, I'm thrilled to introduce you to my very first guest. My plan on this podcast is to interview a variety of people, both those with thyroid issues themselves and various experts in the field of thyroid health, those categories. Her name is Jackie Isles. She is a woman with Hashimoto's herself, but she is also a holistic nurse consultant, a health coach, lifestyle consultant, Reiki master, Blue Diamond leader with doTERRA. She is a woman who walks her talk and has lived through her own history of having Hashimoto's. So Jackie brings to the interview a warmth, a kindness, so much wisdom, and you're going to love the conversation that I have with Jackie. She used to work in health retreats, so we talk about having a health retreat at home on that sort of everyday basis. We talk a lot around stress management and different triggers to thyroid conditions. So please join me in episode 3 in my conversation with Jackie Isles. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Thyroid. I would love it if you would subscribe to the podcast and share it with others that you know with thyroid problems. Let's get the message out there. If you'd like to connect with me further, the best place to do that is via my website, annabelbateman.com. From there, you'll be able to join my Facebook group, book a strategy session with me, download my freebie, and access any show notes for this episode. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
The information presented and discussed in this podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease and should not be used as a substitute for proper advice from a qualified professional.